My name is Angela. I'm a wife, mom, writer, and photographer behind the blog Crown and Countryside. Join me on my quest to create a slower life with natural food and homemaking. Hello, today we're going to do some fun things with canning. We are going to can some homemade bone broth, some shredded chicken, and some chicken soup. So this winter when I'm making homemade food, I'll have all three of those things within arm's reach. So it makes it much easier to cook from scratch. And here I have a loaf of homemade sourdough bread. I've been doing sourdough for about 5 years, so let's dive right in. We're going to get started on the bread here. That is the starter. The recipe calls for water, which you can totally use water, but I always use whey from my yogurt making. And I found that the whey works very well. I'm using the KitchenAid here, but I have made so many loaves of bread by hand, just a bowl and a wooden spoon. If you ever watch Pasta Grannies, you could see that it's amazing the things that they do with zero appliances. All they have is like a bowl and a spoon and a rolling pin, and they can make all kinds of things. I am not there yet. I lean on my appliances quite a bit, but I also like to be able to walk away from it. So I think there's benefits to both for sure. I keep my sourdough starter in the fridge, so it's pretty sleepy every time I mix it. But after it combines with the flour, it wakes right up and it'll rise. You'll see in a minute the risen sourdough bread. It's amazing what you can do just with chemistry without any extra yeast. My mixer is starting to slow down, as you can see that it's getting thicker. I decided while I was making this that I needed to fill the fridge with a little bit more yogurt. So I got out the crock pot and decided to fill it up there. So I have another video where I show more detail about the yogurt making process, but it is extremely easy. Just like the sourdough, I feel that most of these cultured products basically make themselves. If you guide it down the process, it's going to do its thing. Now this is my other crock pot, my bigger crock pot. I started cooking down the chicken so we could add it to the jars. Now this dough is really nice and formed now. It's so nice to work with it with your hands. Here, I'm just cutting up the chicken, removing bones. I cooked this chicken before canning, but you can absolutely raw pack it and let it cook while it's in the canner. I cooked it beforehand for a couple of reasons. One, it was frozen and it was on the bone, and I needed to separate it from the bone. And two, I had to cook the whole thing anyway, as I was separating the bones and making the bone broth. So I decided to just go ahead and can the chicken pre-cooked. But you can totally can boneless, skinless chicken. So that works just fine. So as I was going through this process, I was basically moving the meat for canning into the pot on my left to the right side of the camera. And I was moving the bones back into the crock pot so I could cook them down a little bit more. When it's cooked like that, it's so easy to separate. The bones just come right out. I buy the chicken on the bone at Costco for 99 cents a pound. And I found that it works really well for us. I use a Berkey to filter my water and make the bone broth. Now I'm going to strain the yogurt. This has been culturing for about 24 hours now. I could have let it culture longer, but I was impatient and hungry. I'm putting it in my half-gallon jars. I started buying my jars from Azure Standard. I am trying to switch over from Ball Mason. I still have tons of ball jars and I will continue using them until they break or whatever, but I've noticed that the quality of the Azure jars is quite a bit better. So I'm hoping that these are going to be more of an heirloom variety that, people, if they want to, could still use in 100 years. That would be awesome. I'm definitely all about buying it once and buying it right. You actually don't have to strain it. You can skip this step altogether. But I strain it because I like it to be more of like a Greek yogurt. What is in the bottom after it strains through the towel is actually whey. Now here's the sourdough that's risen a little bit more. It makes just such a lovely crumb. I always long ferment my dough. I let it go for a while, which works out for me because my starter's always freezing cold when I put it in there. So it needs to warm up, but also I like for everything to be nice and fermented. So it works. It's at least 24 hours. I have overproofed it before. I've let it go too long until it's a sticky mess, but if I get it when it's just at this perfect dough texture like this, then it just works just fine. It's my trusty Martha Stewart enameled cast iron. I've had it forever. It's probably 15 years old. And it shows signs of wear, but it still has a ton of life in it, so I will keep using it. Now for this recipe, I just did onions, carrots, and canned chicken and bone broth to make a chicken soup. I did not put noodles in it. I thought that I would add the noodles when I open the jar to serve. I didn't want the noodles to turn to mush. I've never canned it with the noodles in it. You could also add other things if you want. Canning is very forgiving when it comes to vegetables. If you give it 25 minutes in the pressure canner, that will cover most things. You'll have to look up the processing time for each thing. But if you wanted to add peas or celery or some other type of vegetable, you could totally do that. The one caveat I would have is if you add white potato, you'll want to dice it up small and take the skins off, because white potato is known to have a higher risk of botulism if you leave the skins on. But if you just look up the processing time for each thing that you put in the jar and go with the longest amount of time, the item that needs the longest amount of processing time, then you should be good to go with this type of canning. And here's the chicken that we processed earlier. If you don't wipe the rims off, a piece of chicken or oil or something can prevent the jar from sealing. And if any oxygen gets into your jars, especially a leak from the outside, it can cause your food to spoil. So you have to be careful about that. I'll have to wipe them off in a minute after I do the broth. I reboil the bones a couple of times, and then once they're so boiled that nothing else is coming out of them, I just grind them up and put them in my garden. It's going to be so nice to just be able to grab a jar and just have a good homemade meal. I think canning chicken like this is one of the closest things that you can get to instant homemade food. I can make with the canned chicken, I can make chicken salad, chicken soup, could make all kinds of things. You could put it in a stir fry. Oh, these are going to be just plain broth. That's going to be great for putting into a chili or rice or another soup or making a roux. There's all kinds of things you can do with bone broth. You can just drink it out of a cup when you are sick. Just heat it up a little bit. It's so good for you. Trying to get just enough to fill up that last jar there. Wiping off the rims again, just to make sure that there's nothing that'll prevent it from getting a good seal. I was having a lot of problems with siphoning, which means your liquid is leaving the jars as it's being pressurized. And then I realized I wasn't venting my canner long enough. So if you tighten the jars and vent your canner for 10 to 15 minutes before you put the weight on and start the timer, it works so much better. It's always a sigh of relief when I open up the canner and the water inside is clear. If it's cloudy and full of food, I know that my jars didn't hold up, and that's disappointing when that happens. And here's the sourdough bread. The jars are in the canner. This looks so good. It's just perfect. And here's the jars in the pressure canner. The pressure is just about where it needs to be, so I need to make sure it doesn't go too much higher or lower than that. I feel like I got a lot done today. It's been so nice to just spend a day in the kitchen and get all of this done. And here's the jars when they are finished. They are bubbling and popping as they should be. I put a towel down, you can't see it, but I put a towel down to protect my counter from the hot jars and also protect my jars from the cool counter so they don't explode. I don't get tired of this at all. I love seeing all the bubbles. That continues for an hour or more. It's amazing. Can't wait to enjoy these all winter. That's all I had for today. Thanks for joining me. See you next week.